So I know I said the first video I would talk about was Pretty Dead Things, but that's not the first film that I had made. The first like short film I had made was with my buddy Taylor, Taylor Hole, and it was called T-Rex versus Harambe. It was a little bit that we had done after Harambe had died, and we were just, you know, drifting his cars around this area, and it was the first time I was, you know, planning to make a video. Everything before that was kind of like, hey, I'm gonna film this dog, or I'm gonna film my brother, or whatever. You know, I also was taking photos of my Nikon camera, which was the Nikon D5200, which I still have. It's a solid camera, great for photos, but it wasn't really known for video. And by that point with Taylor, I had saved up some money, and I wanted to buy a camera specifically for video. My buddy Eder had told me about the Panasonic GH4, and everywhere I went online, I was looking at, you know, reviews, and it was doing well. Yeah, it wasn't doing good at low light, but now when it came to lens recommendation, people were saying, you know, like a 35mm lens, it's wide, and you'll do this and you'll get that, you know, it's a good starter lens. So I knew I wanted a more film style lens, so I went with the Rokinon 35mm f1.5 or t1.5. But here's the thing I didn't know, at that time at least. GH4 has a 2.4x crop when in 4K. And the reason I say 4K was because everybody was, you know, hyping up 4K is the way to go. 4K this, you know, the resolution, the quality, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of fell for that trap where I was listening to other people talk about how 4K was good. And 4K does have its perks, I will say that. I'm shooting this in 4K right now, but I have no intention in delivering in 4K. This is the very setup. I went that day to film these cars drift around this neighborhood, this place. And here's the mistakes I started off with that. First of all, 35mm lens on a camera that has a 2.4x crop is over 70mm. And I was trying to get wides. Well, I didn't know I couldn't get a wide with this, other than backing up like, you know, a ton. So that was the first mistake. Second mistake, this sensor, as we all know, is not stabilized. So what happens when you're shooting over 70mm and non-stabilized? Pretty shaky footage, but we still made it away with it. So a lot of shots, thankfully it's action, and it was okay. I warp stabilized a bit in post, and we got away with it. But another thing I didn't think about was when these cars were drifting past me, they were gonna be shooting rocks at me and little pebbles and whatnot. I didn't even have a UV filter on there. Like, I didn't have that. I didn't think about that. So these were the like little mistakes I had made early on. This is like a $400 lens. I didn't even have a mic on it. So getting good audio was non-existent. But thankfully, you know, it was cars making a lot of noise. We put a song over it. That was, you know, okay. Even the edit was rough. I messed up so many places and times, but it was all a learning process, learning curve. From there, we moved on to the GH5. I had, you know, I understood the mistakes I was making with the GH4. I still use it as a good B cam, sometimes C cam, because I'm using the Pocket 4K. But now with the GH5, you know, I love the stabilized sensor, better in low light, 4K 60. And then when I got into more narrative stuff, I shot, you know, a couple of short films lately. I had rented the Pocket like 3 times, and each time was like $300. So I was just like, I'm getting ridiculously close to being able to afford this camera because how much I'm renting it. And then secondly, DaVinci Resolve, like I wanted that software. It's $300. I'm playing RuneScape right now too. So like I was saying, some of the mistakes I made, I didn't have a UV filter, and on top of that, not having a UV filter, I also didn't have a a variable ND filter. And so some of the things I didn't know was the crop on my camera. I didn't have a UV filter to protect the front of the lens. You can use a very cheap one, but just make sure you have one. I also didn't have a variable ND or any kind of ND to help stop light. So things would have been overexposed, but it was kind of cloudy that day, and I just stopped down the lens as much as I could. I think I even shot at the wrong shutter speed because I didn't truly know about shutter speed. Now I don't shoot with shutter speed anymore. I shoot with shutter angle because I prefer it. I've made mistakes in the past when I'm swapping from like 4K 60 to 4K 24, and my shutter speed was off because I was in a hurry. But these are mistakes I've made in the past. So yeah, that was the first time I had filmed something. The edit was rough, but we made it. I'll try to drop a couple of clips from it. But it was, yeah. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now, but I know I want to continue making some videos, and I wanted to get T-Rex versus Harambe out because the next one should be Pretty Dead Things. And that one was a lot more involved between pre-production, production, and post-production, or I was more involved, I should say. T-Rex versus Harambe was literally, you know, Taylor telling me his idea and me going out there with him and filming it. Kudos to Keno, or credits to Keno, I should say, because he came with me. Keno's my brother, and he was better than I was at flying a drone. And the justification I had for him being able to fly a drone better was because he was a better pilot in Battlefield 3 than I was. But it held up. You know, we got a couple drone shots. It was the first time I ever learned how to mask something in the middle, because I was standing in the middle of the cars while they would drift. And so I ended up doing was copying. That doesn't matter. You don't care. But yeah, that was the first time I made a video. T-Rex versus Harambe. Learned a lot. And that's one thing I've been doing every time I make a video is I keep learning. So if you guys are a fan of the setup and how it looks, let me know. Until the next one, I'm gonna keep doing it.